Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Friday, November 30th, 2018. Excuse me, I have to read Twitter for a while just to make sure I know what's going on here. Let's say President lying, something, absconding to Argentina. Yeah, okay. So we got to catch up on all of the things that are happening today. I don't know whether we should really just do a show or just read Twitter together because the stories are changing minute by minute. President Flight Risk is in Argentina this morning. I don't know if that's a great idea. Open question as to whether or not the Secret Service would apprehend him on our behalf if he attempted to make off, let's say, on Putin's jet for Russia. He can room with Edward Snowden when he gets there. I mean, it's not a bad place to abscond from, Argentina. Lots of people do it. So just think about it while you're there. And it's all unraveling. We'll watch it unravel for a little while, and then it'll sort of stall over the weekend, I think. I mean, unless it's just this is it and he never comes back from Argentina. I suppose it's possible. Okay, well, do we bother catching up on details? Do we just jump right in where it is? Do we assume that Donald Trump is individual one? Because I think that came up before. Let's see. I mean, I don't even know where to start with focus-wise. I mean, I think you've probably been following the stories right along with us here. And as a matter of fact, since I'm puzzled as to how to deal with things on the show today, we'll take Bill's suggestion. He just says, I'm going to forego words today and just spend 2 hours dropping shoes in front of the microphone. I might as well. And then I can drop the microphone when I'm done, too. Man, I mean, I guess it's maybe best summed up in Brian Boitler's tweet this morning, which let me scroll back and make sure I've got it on hand. But he was just saying we are comically / uncomfortably close to may have committed some light treason at this point. Trump is awake in Argentina. I mean, the time zone is relatively close, so it's not a surprise. He may be a little bit surprised about, he's probably fascinated watching the toilets flush the other direction more than anything else. He's not busy. He's tweeting up a storm. He should be getting prepared for meetings with all of the world leaders because he's at a G20 summit, but he's not having any meetings with any world leaders. He's canceled them all, including Putin, although yesterday he gave mixed signals. About 45 minutes apparently passed in between his announcing, oh yeah, I'm absolutely going to meet with Putin. I think it's great. We get along so good. And then, Mr. President, you really shouldn't because X, Y, Z. Oh yeah, right. Oh, we're canceling that. But he's going to get together with him anyway. I mean, you saw what he did with the last couple times they met. He can't stay away from Putin. So this time, I guess Mueller decided to let him go to Argentina without an ankle monitor. And so I guess it's on him if he makes off. But it wasn't clear that he had brought any of his personal assets with him. All the White House towels are missing, though. That's kind of weird. And I'm figuring Steve Mnuchin at this point had spent last night emptying out Fort Knox and is just sitting on a pile of gold bricks somewhere. Maybe he's on his way to Argentina, too. I don't know whether that's their stopping point or whether they just head on to Moscow. Yesterday was absurd. Trump spent time in front of the microphones on his way to the helicopter, on his way to Air Force One, on his way to Argentina, on his way to Russia, explaining everything was totally legal. Everything I did is, and of course, telling everybody I could do whatever I want during the campaign. And I guess the big sticking point of yesterday was Michael Cohen had just gone to court to say, yeah, I was lying to Congress and other investigators when I said that we had wrapped up exploring Trump Tower Moscow by January of 2016 and that we suspended activity on that and every other, any other Russian projects anyway, and they may have said everywhere, until the election was over. But now it turns out he was lying about that, and they were attempting to nail down a Moscow Trump Tower deal as late as, what did they say, June of 2016, post official nomination by the by the Republicans, I guess, at that, or did they had the convention, and not in June. We'll have to read up on the stories and see how it times out with respect to the convention. But of course, remember that there was all sorts of shenanigans going on around the convention, and that Paul Manafort was originally hired as convention manager, not necessarily campaign manager. That's one thing. And then the weirdness about the one thing that Trump's team wanted done at the convention. They didn't want to change anything else. They just wanted to change the Republican platform language about treatment of Russia and Ukraine. And everyone's been puzzling over that. But basically, the storyline, if you've missed it all somehow and you're scrambling to catch up on the details like I am, the answer is everything you thought was true is true. Everything that they said wasn't true is true. It's the basic rule holds. It's another lesson, here, this has been another episode of how to read a Trump comment. If he says they stopped working on Trump Tower Moscow, he didn't. If he says he's got no deals with Russia, he does. That's really all you need to know about how this guy works. By the way, just along the way, I thought I would remind everybody today, Friday, November 30th, as I mentioned, last day of November. How have you been enjoying that middle-class tax cut that you got before November even started? Do you remember that one? That was the pre-election promise from Donald Trump. We're working very seriously. Well, what did he say? Very strongly. We're working very strongly on getting a huge middle-class tax cut, largest middle-class tax cut in the history of the universe, and maybe another universe as well, because there could be more than one. I'm just saying that it's possible. And if there is, we're cutting taxes bigger and more strongly than even that universe. And you didn't get it, and of course there was no bill. But the Wikipedia changers were hard at work making sure there was one. They dropped a bill. Congress has been there. What are they doing? It's not the 10% or 200% or 50 bazillion % tax cut we were promised. Boo-hoo. You were never going to get it. I know. Everybody knows that. But I don't know. In case you were counting the money or thinking of using it for, I don't know, college education, you're out of luck. Okay. What do we have here? Here's a suggestion. Michael Musson says Turkey should take this idea and rename the street outside their Saudi embassy. I think it sounds like a good idea. Let's check this out. A D.C. neighborhood group just voted to rename the street in front of the Saudi embassy for Jamal Khashoggi. That's something that's a bit of a parlor trick here in Washington D.C. They do like to do things like that from time to time, and I think it's a pretty cool one. By the way, just in case you're listening down there in Argentina, just a warning to those of you in the Ecuadorian embassy, if you hear a knock on the door in the middle of the night, don't answer it. It's Donald Trump, and he's just going to stay there, and he's never going to leave, and you're going to be very upset and disappointed in how that goes. Okay, so let's see. What other intros? Do we need to catch up on anything else, like immediately? I don't know. I don't think so. So it looks like he's going to stay president through the day, and I think we can take one eye off of his hiding out. Like I keep saying, I want to use the word abscond here, but he hasn't taken anything with him, and I feel like you really need to have made off with some material goods in order to truly get the full meaning of abscond in there. But anyway, we'll keep an eye on him and see whether he defects at any point, I guess. Okay, where shall we go? There's like legal interpretations out there, Lawfare blog out there, a lot of analysis of what the Cohen plea deal tells us, some of which is interesting, some of which is not, but I really think like we might be able to skip it. Maybe we'll fill in details later if it really becomes necessary later in the show. because basically, I mean, I really think like the best summary you can get for all this is all of the things that seemed implausible when Cohen said them or Trump said them, and everybody's like, come on, he's lying. You're right, he was lying. And really, about the timing, the things he was talking about, the places they were stealing money from, the influence that Russians had over him. And I guess it's now becoming clear to a lot of people that the Russians have had Trump compromised for a long time. But we knew this. So I guess all we have to say is you've been correct all this time. I did see some mention on Twitter yesterday that apparently there are people in the White House or in the administration at lower levels, I guess, who basically said, I really never believed that Trump had Russia deals like he said he said he didn't. I have no deals in Russia. I have no interest in Russia. So I believed him until the Cohen plea yesterday. I don't really know how much credence to put in those statements because, like I said, everybody knew. It was pretty obvious that he was lying, and you heard his first explanation, the idea that they believed it then, and now that, I mean, I guess what they're saying is, I'm working in the Trump administration. I'm a Trump devotee, but wow, Michael Cohen, he was, so he's either lying then or he's lying now. That's the game Giuliani is playing, right? And that's the usual game you get from the lawyers. I can't believe that there are any people who are like, I'm changing my mind about Trump because Michael Cohen, because I believe that guy, and I'll follow Michael Cohen anywhere. I find that hard to believe, to say the very least. Okay, let's see. Other things to catch up on. This is a very important story right here. I put this is a Good Friday weirdness story. You might enjoy this, just to take your mind off of everything else for a few minutes. I saw this on CNN. Now, I'm not reading it to you from CNN. I'm reading it to you from amp.cnn.com. You know what that means. Jordan Valinsky, CNN business reporter, has this story. And there's sort of no Trump in here, except it's maybe a metaphor for Trump. I like this idea. This is a fantastic, fun thing. Payless shoes. You've seen the Payless shoe store. It gives it all away in the headline, but what the hell? We'll just do it. Payless fools influencers with a fake store. Okay? Now, this has everything. It has shoes. I don't know. Is that a big deal to anybody? It has Payless shoes, which is huge. Everyone loves that. But it's a story about, really largely about internet influencers. And it always drives me crazy to find out that there are people who make a living as internet influencers who are not famous otherwise, but for some reason they set themselves up. I mean, it's a brilliant plan. Don't get me wrong. I guess I would do it if I had the stomach for it. But basically, let's say you like fancy, expensive stuff, but you're a regular schlub like me, and you don't have a lot of money sitting around to buy all the fancy stuff that you want, but you wish you did. And you also don't want to get a job of any sort in order to earn money to pay for those things. What if you went on the internet and whined about how you wanted those things and said you would be willing to show them off online in pictures if someone gave them to you? And brands would just think, he's an influencer. Let's send him some free blah, blah, blah product, and he'll wear it or put it on or whatever and say great things about it on the internet to the sometimes 1 million people who follow this person, and then they'll all go out and buy the thing. And I guess it either works or we may wake up, in a year or two and find that there's an article that says, yeah, the whole influencer culture was a lie. It never worked. We never made any money on it at all. The only people who made money were the people who were collecting freebies as influencers. But again, more power to them, I guess, if they do it. It's not a new thing, and I've always thought of it as a pretty brilliant plan. If you think it's lowbrow to do, consider that I think it was the business model of Martha Stewart for years, and everybody thinks she's such a tastemaker. On the other hand, she went to jail. but not for that. That's the thing. She should have maybe gone to jail for that. Essentially, Martha Stewart for years when she was successful and pre-going to jail, and everyone thought she was this great style maven. And she was, she had to, it's not like she wasn't producing this show that people liked, or the magazine, or whatever else she had going on. But essentially, she was, tragically addicted to home decorating and cooking. And those are supposed to be admirable qualities, so it's okay to be addicted to that. And, she wanted to decorate her house with beautiful stuff that maybe originally she couldn't afford. But now she has a whole the whole show and the production costs of all the things. Basically, we'll raise production money. I'll decorate my house and I'll cook a fancy meal and we'll film it. And that's a show. And then I'll just keep the stuff. And so she was the original non-social media influencer in the style department. And then people realized, with YouTube and Instagram and the internet, I can do all that without all the production fees. And I don't have to keep buying houses in Sag Harbor and Greenwich and wherever else and decorating them because it's getting annoying already. So now that you have the rise of the internet influencer, what I'm saying is people should be sending me free stuff and then not expecting me to do anything in exchange for it. I want to take it to the next level, if you will, where I influence influencers. Send me your goods. I will use them secretly, but that will only make it more exclusive. That'll make other influencers want the stuff, and then you can get the pitchmen for it. So it's always fun to see a pound of flesh taken out of these people, except then when you get down to the bottom of it, you realize they are just schlubs scraping along like the rest of us, and maybe they shouldn't be targeted. And F you corporate bastards. This could also be the takeaway from this. I'll let you decide. Payless fools influencers with a fake store, says Jordan Valinsky of CNN Business. Though it is datelined New York, I think this happened in California. So I guess that means Jordan never got up off his ass and did any original reporting on this story. Jordan may be a woman. I'm also not certain about that. Or, maybe I shouldn't even be getting into assigning genders. This is a terrible idea. We could have that discussion for 2 hours. But you didn't need to go there. You could follow it easily enough from New York. Here's the story. Who, they wonder, Jordan wonders, would be willing to pay upward of $500 for Payless shoes? And the answer is an idiot, I guess. Hoodwinked social media influencers. That's who. I told you the answer was an idiot. Payless, a brand known for budget-friendly shoes, opened a fake pop-up store, and we could talk all day about the trend of pop-ups. That's something I really want to discuss one day. Anyway, a pop-up store, this is great, called Paylessi. It's like Italian, Palessi, Paylessi, in a Los Angeles mall, and invited influencers to the grand opening. The store was stocked with Payless shoes in disguise. You hear that? In disguise. I don't know. We haven't had any sound effects today. So, and there's a video accompanying the article. I wish you could see it. You will when you see the linked article. They dressed up this store and they pop up, which, by the way, is industry terminology that makes it sound more, somehow trendier and more upscale than we rented an empty storefront and opened up for a little while and then went out of business. You may have some experience with pop-up stores in around you, like if you have one of those Halloween stores that I forget what they call the place. Spirit Halloween stores. We have one every year. It, finds an open storefront. Whoever's closed, they rent their store for October, and they sell Halloween costumes, and then they clear out. And there's other models of pop-up out there. Some kiosk style ones, some things that are built in what's basically a gussied up shipping container. It's real interesting. But pop-up stores. Anyway, this one is dressed up, not pop-up style, really. It's meant to look like it's a real shoe store. So, but a fancy one. And you should see they have these beautiful displays and these backlit glass racks for the shoes where they have one shoe out and everybody admires how wonderful it looks. And the staff is clad all in form-fitting black wear because they're so emo and stuff. And they have this beautiful backlit display of the Palessi with a Italian marble carving, Michelangelo looking sort of thing. And maybe it is a Michelangelo. I couldn't tell you. I don't keep track of the man sculptures. But the point is it's supposed to look upscale and Italian. There's some ferns in the picture. I can see some track lighting. It's very attractive. So they dressed it up like a fancy ass shoe store where you might pay $500 for something, but they filled it with Payless shoes. I'm still going. That's the story, ladies and gentlemen. That's the whole thing. Payless, a brand known for budget-friendly shoes, opens this pop-up in the Los Angeles Mall, and it's a store full of Payless shoes. Now, then they have some video that they put together of, I guess, the influencers in the store, and I'm already disgusted just looking at the people in the shot, because it's a grand opening of a shoe store, but they're all dressed up like they're on the red carpet somewhere. But that's the influencer game. You're dressing the part of a glamorous shopper of some kind. So you do your best to look like a Kardashian, I guess. And you go, and they ended up making a commercial out of it because they asked these people, what do you think of the shoes? I would pay $400 or $500, a woman says in a TV ad, holding a pair of $19.99 sneakers. Another shopper calls the Payless shoes elegant and sophisticated. The stunt even included a sleek website and an Instagram account, so you can go and check those things out for yourself. So they interviewed everybody about the shoes, and then they did the little thing. These are real people, not actors. Now, they're not real people. They're internet influencers. That's a totally different category of person. But there you go. A shopper gasps in disbelief when the secret is revealed. Shut up. Are you serious? She says. This hasn't happened to me since you replaced my Folgers crystals, or my fancy coffee with Folgers crystals, or you replaced my Folgers crystals with water you strained through a used Payless sneaker. But it tastes great, and it's less filling. About 80 influencers attended over 2 nights, according to Payless. Man, how do you get on the list for this stuff? They shelled out a total of $3,000. One shopper spent $640 for a pair of boots, which represented an 1,800% markup. Payless, however, returned their money and let them keep the shoes, so they were good sports about it, I guess. Payless says the influencers were paid a small stipend to attend, which is another amazing thing. Again, even if I don't get the free stuff, I go and you pay me money. I go to a store and I look around at things. Really? I'll take it. Is there like a schlub style influencer niche I can get into? This polo shirt, which I've owned for 18 years, is fantastic. Everybody should go back in time and get one. That's all I got for you, style-wise. Payless said the social experiment was meant to remind shoppers that Payless's affordable shoes are fashionable too. And it's a great point. I mean, you look at when you go to the Payless store, you think, well, they're crappy shoes. You mark them up and pretend they're fancy. Sometimes, I guess, you can fool people. Although I'm always saying, whenever I'm shopping for anything, right, whenever I see anything nice and it's super expensive, and I say, I can't afford that, or I shouldn't pay that much money at the very least to get something like that. And I always wonder, then I go looking around and I'm like, I'm sure there's somebody else makes something similar. The knockoffs are always, there's just something wrong with them. And I don't know, maybe it's psychological, like they explain in this article, that you got to have the price tag in order to think that weird quirk is a design feature and not, this is made in a crappy factory somewhere. All right, so there was supposed to be, they now are excusing it by calling it a social experiment, meant to remind shoppers that Payless's affordable shoes are fashionable too. The campaign plays off the enormous discrepancy and aims to remind consumers we are still a relevant place to shop for affordable fashion. Payless CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, I guess, Sarah Couch told Adweek. A study published in 2008 tested the idea that price affects perceptions of quality. There's the science behind this. Do you believe in science? Here's some science. Subjects were given inexpensive wine to drink, but those who were told it was more expensive described it as more flavorful and pleasant to drink. I can believe it. This type of marketing in which real customers are shocked or surprised in order to create viral buzz has been tried plenty of times. It's not an original idea. There are some examples that are given here. That would just be me reading brand names for you. Maybe you would recall the ad campaigns, maybe not. I didn't. Do you want to know the people who are not named here? Dove Soap, Heineken, Burger King, Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble. Do you remember? Okay, they should all send me money now. There you go. They did this thing, and it was all a big success, I'm sure. I remember nothing about those ad campaigns. Payless has been struggling, by the way, against online competitors such as Amazon-owned Zappos and buzzy startups like Allbirds. Does anybody know anything about Allbirds? I've never heard of that. It's too buzzy for me. Payless filed for bankruptcy in 2017 and reemerged from it 4 months later after shuttering nearly 700 stores. Exciting news. But in case you were ever wondering whatever happened to Payless, that is the answer. Okay, that takes us up to our break, and consider it a palate cleanser, I guess. We're going to have to dive back into the real news, but it's Friday. You know, you can excuse us for easing into things. And we'll use a 2-minute break coming up here to regroup and give some thought to which direction to head in. Unless, of course, Trump has resigned while I was reading to you about Payless shoes. Please let me know on the KITM hashtag if that has happened or happens at any point during the show. Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. It's time, I guess, for us to catch up on what's actually going on out there. And I am reminded in combing through the morning's tweets that, I guess the big development in the collusion story and the Trump Tower Moscow story was the feature of the $50 million penthouse condo that Trump was allegedly offering up to Putin if they got the go-ahead to, seal the deal and build this tower. I guess that was supposed to be sort of the beat sweetener there, if you will, for Trump. If you cut this deal for me, knowing full well, essentially you needed to bribe Putin personally in order to get the go-ahead to do a deal this splashy that could potentially, see so much money exchange hands in Moscow or anywhere in Russia. You would need to give Vladimir Putin a taste. And I guess in typical Trump fashion, he went over the top with it because he needed to make a great deal. Immediately, he makes the most idiotic deal possible. Right out of the box, he says, I'll give you $50 million, essentially. I think you probably could have started at a lower number, but no. But, he wants his deal to be the splashiest and most irresistible. Although, I guess if you want to credit Trump with something, you could credit him with this. If you were smart and you are. I was trying to say, if you were Putin and you were smart, and I think he's certainly smarter than Trump, but if you're one of these people that's impressed with big numbers like that and you do things, I mean, I'm impressed with big numbers of money. I just don't do things for them. But if you're the kind of person who would take bribes, I guess it might occur to you that it's possible that Donald Trump would do something like, well, here's what we'll do. We'll dress up the penthouse of this Trump Tower building. I mean, the building didn't exist yet. So how is it worth $50 million? It isn't. It's not built yet. It's another one of those things. We should consider this. Trump was pulling those numbers like he pulls all numbers straight out of his orange ass. And he probably thought, I mean, the truth is, how much is a penthouse in a Trump building in Moscow really worth? Nobody knows. And it's all subjective anyway. So he probably thought, it's probably an apartment that I could ordinarily sell to someone for, I don't know, maybe $10 million. And that would be a serious markup. But what I'll do is I'll say it's $50 million. And Trump or Putin will be like, wow, $50 million, that's a sizable bribe. I'll take it. And what do I care? Why is it worth $50 million? Because I said it's worth $50 million. Here's a little trick. You tell somebody, oh, I'm going to give you something worth $50 million. Maybe it's worth $1 million. You might be able to get a sucker to buy it for $10 million if you brand it just right, like Payless shoes. But see, I knew I would make that story relevant somehow. But, so I'll tell him it's worth $50 million. They haven't built the building yet. You don't know whether it looks good or not. You don't know if it's full of asbestos or not. But $50 million. So, maybe we're doing too much work for Trump in a way, focusing on the numbers. But now, at this point, we're hanging him with the numbers. So the deal was apparently that they were going to give Putin a $50 million condo if he approved the deal, and then they would build the thing. And that's all dirty pool if Trump is a real estate developer and stays a real estate developer. But of course, running for president and offering that bribe to the president of Russia, it carries some additional weight. Neil Katyal is tweeting this morning, re-upping a New York Times piece. Let's get serious and read the New York Times. And he comments thus, re-upping a New York Times piece about conspiracy. It's not a defense for Trump to say, I never gave the $50 million condo to Putin. If he conspired with Cohen to do it, and of course we don't know the facts yet, but he did, he's guilty of conspiracy. Conspiracy is all about uncompleted acts, or at least this is a conspiracy about uncompleted acts. And you don't have to do the things to conspire, right? So that's done before you even attempt them. For some reason, it is illustrated with what appears to be a photo of Stormy Daniels, though maybe that is just another of the conspiracies that they're talking about. This is Neil Katyal's own piece from August 23rd of this year in the New York Times. This conspiracy theory should worry Trump. When two or more people join together to break the law, as Michael Cohen says he and the president did, the penalties can be harsh. Okay, so there were only, in August, all we had, I guess, was, or all we had nailed down anyway, was Stormy Daniels. And so I guess here he's using this piece to illustrate the point that you don't have to successfully complete the plans in order to be guilty of conspiracy. So I guess if it doesn't have any juicy stuff about what happened in the last day or two in Trump Tower, we won't spend the time on the rather lengthy article, but we'll simply let you know that Neil Katyal thinks this article is equally applicable to the Trump Tower deal. You don't actually have to complete the act in order to be guilty of conspiring to do it. The conspiracy part is where you think, hey, this would be a great idea, let's do this. And you agree with others and work with them affirmatively to make it happen. If you fail later, that doesn't excuse you from anything. I guess the other dodge of the day, Steve Bannon correctly identifies by tweeting, if Trump's allies were going to defend him from yesterday's developments, they'd need to get creative. Evidently, they came up with a new thing to scoff at, process crimes. So what are process crimes? Well, they're the sorts of things like obstruction of justice and perjury that people like Lindsey Graham tried to impeach or did impeach President Clinton for. They just didn't successfully remove him from office. But now those things are stupid. And I guess here's been an article on MSNBC describing the situation more fully. To defend Trump, Republicans scoff at process crimes. Yesterday was not a good day for Donald Trump. The president's former personal attorney and fixer, and we should probably at this point remind everybody, if you haven't seen the clip of Trump on his way to the helicopter describing Michael Cohen as a very weak person and not a very smart one, but I hire all the best people. That was kind of a laugh, too. The president's former attorney and fixer pleaded guilty in a federal courtroom, admitting that he lied to Congress about Trump's efforts to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. Oh, and another aside, if you didn't see and get a good laugh at the astonishment with which Fox News, I think through Tucker Carlson, announced to its viewers that, look, they're moving the goalposts. They're making it, now you can get charged with a crime for lying to Congress. Like that was a new development. Of course you can. That's why they have you sworn in every time. And as everybody reminds everybody, every time one of these jokers testifies and we know they're lying, everybody reminds each other, you don't have to be under oath to still be subject to prosecution for perjury for lying to Congress. Maybe only political junkies know that. But I don't know why they're trying to pretend otherwise. Anyway, so this marked the first time the president's private business dealings in Moscow were directly implicated in special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into the broader Russia scandal. I guess the first time somebody came to court to say, yeah, I did it anyway. If the president's Republican allies were going to defend him from developments like these, they'd need to get creative, and evidently they came up with a new thing to scoff at. Process crimes. And I guess this is, what do we got here? This is some Republicans like Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina and Senator John Thune of South Dakota, all the Souths, I guess, said Cohen's admission doesn't prove collusion between Russia and the president. Graham, who has emerged as one of Trump's fiercest defenders, said he had, quote, no idea what that's all about, unquote. When asked about his reaction to Cohen's guilty plea, adding that it seems to be a process crime. How so? I don't know. Soon after, Rush Limbaugh complained, every one of Mueller's indictments is a process crime. Not even a real description of what that's supposed to be. As TPM reported, Michael Anton, former spokesman for Trump's National Security Council, also lashed out at Mueller's team for pursuing a process crime. Putting aside the amazing coincidence of these Republicans coming up with the same rhetorical line on the same afternoon, it's worth pausing to understand what in the world these guys are talking about. There are legal experts who can speak to this with far more authority than I can, but we're going to read him anyway. But as I understand it, and he usually does, a process crime refers to wrongdoing related to an investigation into a crime rather than the crime itself. But, just for a pause, the reason those things are crimes are because we all know that criminals are going to lie to investigators in order to escape liability for the crime. And that will very often create enough doubt that you're unable to convict people for the underlying crime. But if you can prove that they lied in their testimony or to investigators along the way, then at least you can still get them for that. Otherwise, a great defense to any crime is to lie about it and then say, I don't know, it's he said, she said, jury, what do you think? Even if you can prove it's a lie, if there's no such thing as a process crime, and I mean, there really isn't, but if you didn't criminalize lying to investigators, why wouldn't you just lie to investigators? That would set us back a bit. All right, so let's see. There's an example he gives here. Let's say you were suspected of robbing a bank. During the police investigation, you lied about your whereabouts during the robbery, encouraged others to give false testimony, and destroyed relevant evidence. As a result, you were then charged with perjury and obstruction of justice. Those would be process crimes, unrelated to possible charges about the bank robbery itself. For Trump's followers, this has apparently become a life preserver worth clinging to. Trump's lawyer lied to Congress under oath about the proposed Trump Tower Moscow project, but to hear Lindsey Graham and his cohorts tell it, that's not worth making a fuss about. We'd all be better off waiting, the argument goes, to see if Mueller brings collusion-related charges, which he hasn't done. There are, of course, a few problems with such a posture. The first is when a president's partisan followers are reduced to scoffing at the significance of felonies, they're not standing on firm ground. Second, I seem to recall Lindsey Graham serving as impeachment manager 20 years ago against a sitting president accused of perjury. It suggests the Republican lawmakers' indifference towards process crimes is fairly new. And third, there's no reason to assume the special counsel and his team are done. Criminal charges related to the process today may very well lead to an entirely different set of criminal charges tomorrow. Okay, so postscript here as we wrap up. Steve at No More Mr. Nice Guy blog joked yesterday, your right-wing uncle, who'd never encountered the phrase process crime until today, will be tossing it around by the weekend as if he's been talking about process crimes all his adult life. Probably true, although you're probably not going to see your adult uncle again this week. Your right-wing uncle. Adult uncle? Oh, I guess I'm thinking of adult children. That phrasing that popped up from out of nowhere. Okay. Well, you saw him for Thanksgiving. I don't know if you're going to be stuck seeing him again this weekend. But if that's the case, well, good luck to you and try this line out. All right. Let's see. Just trying to figure out what else to add to our roundup today. More comments. Oh, yes. By the way, some fashion help from Matthew Rigdon, who says, you're not wearing a schlubby shirt. You should see this. But you're not wearing a schlubby shirt. You're wearing a distressed shirt. Yes. Okay. Very good. That's true. That's the fashion line for it. Michael Musson commenting on the penthouse thing here. Seriously, I bet the penthouse is way too high off the ground for non-Putin connected people. It's just asking for an accident. Also, foreign bribe offers are illegal too, and that's true. You're not supposed to do that. It would be a violation of the what do they call that? The foreign corrupt activities. What's the name of the act? I can't remember now offhand. I had it in my head yesterday, but it's something along those lines. But yeah, you're not supposed to be involved in bribing foreign governments. All right. Let's see. Other commentary along the way includes, oh yes, thank you, BJ Hutch telling me schlub is the new black, so we have that going for us here. Oh yeah, well this was, I hadn't talked about this. Kate Sherrill says, well, it's worth noting, and I think so. And, I'm going to have to open up something else here too and save that one for later. If you haven't talked about Move On's guilty pleasures, but guilty please, and then adding URES, free ice cream truck yet. I saw somebody talking about the free ice cream the other day. I didn't realize it was Move On that had done it, but she includes the tweet here from Betsy Klein, who says that the guilty please / pleasures truck is parked blocks from the White House today with free treats featuring flavors such as Southern District of New York cheesecake and mocha, like mo-collusion. Get it? Mo-collusion. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act of 1977. Thank you very much, mighty OCD. Nothing to do with the ice cream. I just wanted to shout that one out. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Thank you. So there they are out there with the free ice cream. If you're in D.C., great. Good luck. I like free ice cream, although it is a little cold out there. Anyway, the whole thing is sponsored by Move On, so good job. Calls itself the only ice cream truck defending the independent investigation by Robert Mueller, and it probably is. Very funny. Okay. Well, good on you. Move On for coming up with that one. Okay. Matthew Rigdon, one more comment here. Wouldn't voter fraud be a process crime as well? In a way. I guess you could make that argument. Let's do that. Anyway, let's see. The other thing that flew by here, that's worth mentioning, I guess there's a change in plans, possibly, in the works down in Argentina. And Mark Sumner has a story on it, and Marcos is laughing about it. Basically, Marcos is saying, LOL, that's how you know he's laughing. Funny how Putin snapped his fingers and his puppet Trump snapped to attention. What's going on here? Mark Sumner tweets, Trump and Putin have announced that they're planning an impromptu meeting. That's in scare quotes, impromptu. I just want to point out that planning a meeting makes it, by definition, not impromptu. That's helpful, true. Please excuse me for being a grammar Nazi. All the other kinds of Nazis were already taken. Very true. And very real. So that was the play, I guess. Yeah, I'm going to meet with Putin. Absolutely, Mr. President. I am canceling my meeting with Putin because of very serious international issues. Flies out of the country, lands in Argentina. Yeah, I'm going to meet with Putin. Yeah, of course. So there you go. I really, what I need to do now is go back, find a tweet from yesterday wherein Trump is quoted as saying that they're not going to meet, and then do another episode of How to Read a Trump Comment. They're gonna meet. So that's pretty easy. We'll see if we can take care of that. Maybe we can take care of that during the break, although it's only the 1 minute break coming up next. All right. Other things that we put aside for consideration. Anything else? We'll go back to Pocket for more stuff here. Among the many stories that were bad for Trump yesterday, here's one that happened that you might not have noticed just because there was so much going on, but also because it's unclear exactly what's happening in this story, but it's a very salacious sounding story. Salacious in the political junkie sense. It's not a sex story. Federal agents raid office of lawyer who previously did tax work for Trump. That's in The Hill. And it's one of those headlines that you're not sure what to make of it. I mean, were they looking for Trump stuff? I don't know. The timing is uncanny if they weren't, but they're hedging their bets. Well, he's a lawyer who previously did tax work for Trump. It might mean nothing. It might be unrelated. But here's the story. Federal agents have reportedly raided the Chicago City Hall office of a lawyer who previously did tax work for President Trump. Chicago, huh? Why? Well, it says so in the story. The Chicago Sun-Times reports that federal agents removed everyone from the office of Chicago Finance Committee Chairman Ed Burke on Thursday morning, covering the floor-to-ceiling windows with brown paper. Again, if you are raiding the offices of the Chicago Finance Committee chairman, it may not have anything to do, you don't need Donald Trump to be doing a corruption investigation, probably, in the Chicago Finance Committee, whatever that is. But okay. A spokesman for the U.S. Attorney's Office declined to comment when contacted by the Sun-Times. A man who answered the door at the office when a reporter knocked also declined to comment. Burke's office didn't immediately respond to the Hill's request for comment, so we got nothing. Burke worked for Trump for more than a decade doing property tax work. Well, that's a considerable amount of time. Burke's law firm of Clafter and Burke has worked with Trump's companies repeatedly to reduce the property tax that Trump Tower and his other properties in Chicago have had to pay, according to the Sun-Times. Over his 12 years working for Trump, Burke was allegedly able to cut the property taxes on the downtown tower by more than $14 million. Stolen from you, Chicago taxpayers. Burke stopped working for Trump this summer, so it may be relevant, citing irreconcilable differences in letters filed with the Illinois State Property Tax Appeal Board. The federal agent's appearance at the Chicago office of Burke's, takes place on the same day Trump's former personal attorney Michael Cohen entered into a plea agreement to cooperate with special counsel Robert Mueller. And you know what? That guy is investigating Russian interference in the 2016 election. I love when they tell you that. Last week, Trump submitted his written answers to a list of questions from Mueller, whose probe he has repeatedly dismissed as a witch hunt. Well, the last 30 seconds was a total Waste of time, but okay. Anyway, it could be something there, just something to watch over the weekend, and we'll figure out in a couple of days whether or not it's relevant to the investigation. Here's another interesting Friday-ish story. I'm just sort of sweeping through Pocket at this point. A process story. It's not even a process crime, but sort of a process story, I guess. A historical footnote to remember so that one day when it's a trivia question, you can say, I remember the answer to that, or I remember hearing about it on Kagro in the morning. Just one of these interesting things that'll be an asterisk in a book somewhere. Brenda Jones, sworn into House for final weeks of 2018. Brett Samuels wrote this up for The Hill. Just one of those wacky stories I thought you might enjoy if I took a look at it. Representative Brenda Jones, don't know her? You could be excused for that. Democrat of Michigan, sworn in on Thursday, yesterday. Why? To fill the seat vacated by former Representative John Conyers for the final weeks of 2018. This is an interesting little twist of fate here. Speaker Paul Ryan administered the oath of office, he's still Speaker, to Jones as a handful of her Democratic colleagues, including House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, looked on from the House floor. It is time to get to work, Jones said in brief remarks aimed at her constituents, except there really isn't very much work to do. But ordinarily, if you had won a special election to fill a vacated seat, you would want to get to work. But there's a slight twist to the story here. It's time to get to work, Jones said in brief remarks aimed at her constituents. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves during this lame duck session. Do what you expect me to do and join my colleagues in getting the job done for the 13th Congressional District and for the United States of America. It's an admirable outlook on life. Great work ethic, right? It is the first time Michigan's 13th Congressional District will have a representative since Conyers resigned in December of 2017 amid sexual misconduct allegations, the Detroit News reported. So that seat's been vacant for a while because wasn't the Michigan governor monkeying around with things there too? Anyway, I don't know. Jones, who is also the president of the Detroit City Council, won a special election to serve out the remainder of Conyers' term. Okay, but who is the president of the Detroit City Council and a member of Congress? That sounds weird. But wait, there's more. She won the special election to serve out the remainder of Conyers' term, but lost her bid for a full 2-year term to Representative-elect Rashida Tlaib. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that even close to right. Tlaib. She's a representative-elect, and so I better get that right. Now, Tlaib will officially take office in January as part of a new Democratic House majority. So imagine that. It's basically, Conyers resigns in December of 2017. The replacement isn't sworn in until basically almost December 2018. Had to win a special election to get there. I don't remember when the special election was even held. But she's sworn in. She's going to be there for a month because she lost the special or the regular election coming up, or the election that took place in November. And so she's going to be a member of Congress for 1 month during a lame duck session with a Republican majority. And how disappointing, I'm sure, for her. But how exciting for supporters of Rashida Tlaib instead, I guess. The Detroit News reported, though, this is the interesting thing, that Jones has maintained her spot on the Detroit City Council while she serves in the lame duck session of Congress. And in fact, the House created an exception for Jones to a long-standing precedent requiring members to give up state offices to serve in Congress, the news outlet reported. And I found that very interesting. And I'm not even 100% sure that, I guess there's no constitutional prohibition there. And I guess I'm mildly, pleasantly surprised that a Republican House would bother to make an accommodation like this for a Democrat, even though it seems relatively harmless. It seems like the sort of thing they'd be petty about and say no to, because why allow a Democratic vote to be cast even once or twice, I guess, during the lame duck session, rather than keep, what's the difference at this point, keeping that seat vacant for another month? They shouldn't have bothered to begin with. But okay, they were feeling generous, and now we know that that's something that the House can do if they want to, although we know that the answer is they could do anything, basically, that they want to. But great footnote to history, I thought, and I don't know, worth sharing. I was going to say well worth sharing, but it's marginally worth sharing on a Friday. Very interesting stuff to nerds like me. Okay, let's see. Important news right before the break, but again, not too much to say about it. But Tim Scott, Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, has come out and said that, yes, he was basically voting for cloture on the Thomas Farr nomination and was going to let the nomination go forward, but has announced since then that he is pulling the trick of voting for cloture, but intends to vote against the nomination itself, which sometimes does happen. And so that basically appears to have killed the nomination. They were supposed to have voted on that, just proceeded right to it yesterday, but I guess with the continued holdout from Flake and now the opposition of Tim Scott, that's enough to sink the nomination for now. And, oops, wrong music there. There we go. And see, they're right next to each other. I really have to rearrange this board. Anyway, that's good news. I'm glad it happened. It might have been more fun and interesting to see it all happen the other day during the cloture vote. But I guess he has his reasons, and I'm glad he came through. And lots of people making the very proper observation. That means still that 49 Republican senators still thought this jerk was okay. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I am still taking a look around for yesterday's tweets about the cancellation of the meeting, but again, that 1 minute break is just not enough for it. But yeah, that story now breaking wide, and everybody enjoying watching Trump knuckle under once again. He's really making it pretty obvious. I wonder if at any point Mueller or other investigators are sort of regret that he isn't a better adversary and that they don't really have to exercise their skills to the fullest extent to nail this guy down. Anyway, who knows? Let's see. To get back to the legal proceedings, this piece looked relatively intriguing. Ken White writing in The Atlantic, where they publish intriguing stuff. So that's how you know it's going to be intriguing. 3 remarkable things about Michael Cohen's plea. These developments would, under normal circumstances, end a presidency. And that's what's so intriguing about it. Just to remind yourself of how far from normal we really are here. The guy is still president. Michael Cohen's decision to plead guilty to lying to Congress on Thursday was remarkable for 3 reasons. That's what we heard in the headline. The first was that Cohen walked into a Manhattan federal courtroom unannounced. He did it by surprise. And I guess what he's really getting at here is we live in a political environment characterized by constant leaks, each choreographed more carefully than a public announcement. The drama of learning what's going to happen at an event rather than before the event has mostly disappeared. But Cohen's plea, a momentous development in special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation, happened with no warning. That reflects admirable discipline in Mueller's office. That's the point that Armando has constantly made. The place doesn't leak. That's pretty remarkable in the modern era. That's true. By the way, great job as eyes and ears in the Justice Department, Matt Whitaker. You're doing a bang-up job. Although I did see somebody say this morning, oh, he knew, he just didn't say anything, which I don't know whether that's true or not, or whether that's believable. But I guess we'll see in the near future. The second remarkable thing was that the plea happened at all. Cohen already pleaded guilty in August to 8 federal felonies, including tax fraud, bank fraud, and campaign finance violations. That plea already ended his career and exposed him to at least several years in federal prison. By contrast, Cohen's new plea is to a lone count of lying to Congress in violation of Title 18 United States Code Section 1001, a weapon Mueller has wielded ruthlessly, there's no Ruth at all in there, I guess, against President Donald Trump's followers, including Michael Flynn, the notorious spy, George Papadopoulos, the idiot spy, Rick Gates, and Paul Manafort. The conviction won't increase Cohen's sentence, and the additional felony count won't have any perceptible impact on his life. If anything, by adding a cooperation term to his plea agreement, this new plea gives him an opportunity to reduce his sentence. Normally, federal prosecutors don't waste time with this sort of rubble bouncing. So why would Mueller spend the time and resources on it? Because it tells a story about Trump and his campaign, and it lays a marker. It's not clear whether the Constitution allows Mueller to indict a sitting president. I'll say yes. But Department of Justice policy forbids it, and Mueller is a rule follower. If Mueller thinks the president has committed a federal crime, his remedy is to recommend impeachment and a report to the Attorney General. And by the way, when he does recommend that, will everybody be saying, "Oh my God, he's such a left-wing nut job"? You don't talk about it. I gather that they won't. I mean, they may say we still don't have the votes, and I wish he hadn't, but it won't be because he's a left-wing nut job. Anyway, the Attorney General, in turn, is supposed to tell Congress the outcome of the special counsel's investigation and decide whether the report should be made public. Did you catch the problem? The acting Attorney General is Matthew Whitaker. Did you just catch the problem with that phrase? Because he's not the acting Attorney General. It's a lie. But okay, I see what they're doing here. The claim here is that the acting Attorney General is Matthew Whitaker, Trump's creature and a vigorous critic of Mueller's investigation. Mueller has every reason to expect that Whitaker will suppress the report and limit what he shows to Congress. This part we heard about before, though. A formal report is not, however, Mueller's only way to tell Congress and the nation about his conclusions. The journalist Marcy Wheeler, I love the phrase, the journalist Marcy Wheeler, it says so right here, has written extensively about her theory that Mueller will, quote, make his report, unquote, through court filings against Trump Confederates like Manafort and Cohen. On Monday, Mueller accused Manafort of lying to investigators, breaching his cooperation agreement, and committing further federal crimes. He promised he'd bring the receipts when he filed briefs urging a long sentence. Those sentencing briefs will let Mueller tell the story of how Manafort lied about the Trump campaign and, by extension, lay out the evidence of what the Trump campaign did. Cohen's case lets Mueller do the same thing. Tell a story, make a report. The information, the charging document to which Cohen pleaded, waiving his right to indictment by grand jury, asserts that the Trump organization planned a hotel in Russia, communicated with Russian officials about it, and even contemplated sending Trump himself for a visit to Russia well into 2016, contrary to Cohen's congressional testimony that the plan was abandoned in January of 2016. The significance is not just that Cohen lied to Congress. The significance is what he lied about. The fact that Team Trump continued to pursue Russian opportunities well into the campaign. Not only that, but the information, capital I information, that is the filing with the court, also asserts that Cohen kept Trump, whose identity is not at all concealed as individual one, and others within the campaign informed about his progress in Russia. The third remarkable thing about Cohen's plea was its substance. The President of the United States' personal lawyer admitted to lying to Congress about the President's business activities with a hostile foreign power in order to support the President's story. In any rational era, that would be earth-shaking. Now, it's barely a blip. Over the past 2 years, we've become accustomed to headlines like President's campaign manager convicted of fraud and President's personal lawyer paid for adult actress's silence. We're numb to it all, but these are the sorts of developments that would, under normal circumstances, end a presidency. They still might. Cohen admitted that he lied to Congress to support President Trump's version of events. He notably did not claim that he did so at Trump's request or that Trump knew he would do it. But if Cohen's telling the truth this time, then this conclusion at least is inescapable. The president, who has followed this drama obsessively, knew that his personal lawyer was lying to Congress about his business activities and stood by while it happened. And that's not all. Cohen's plea is only one shoe dropping in a boot warehouse or a Payless store, a pop-up store. Who else lied to Congress about the pursuit of a hotel deal in Russia? Donald Trump Jr.? Did the president himself lie about it in his recent written answers to Mueller's questions? His lawyers claim that his answers matched Cohen's. And now, of course, you have to wonder which of Cohen's answers did they match. I'd have to add that. That's not observed here. Even if the pursuit of the hotel deal wasn't criminal, and there's no evidence that it was, everyone in Trump's orbit who made statements about it, whether under oath or in interviews with the FBI, is in jeopardy today. And of course, I guess we should add here, there's no evidence that the pursuit of a hotel deal wasn't criminal. I'm not certain that that's the case. There is. The offering of the $50 million penthouse would likely be a criminal act under, as Mighty OCD pointed out for us before, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act of 1977, or at least potentially illegal under that. And we'd have to wait and find out and build that case, I guess. And also, it's just simply problematic, if not illegal. It would be one of those other oversights that people never bothered to set down in statute because, of course, the president isn't going to try to bribe the president of Russia in the middle of the campaign because he never really thought he was going to win in the first place and just wanted to be able to use the candidacy for president to better his business position. And if he did win, he would be horribly compromised to a foreign adversary. That's all. No crime here. Anyway, so all these other people who made statements about the Trump Tower in Moscow are probably also in jeopardy right now. They're not just in danger from Mueller either. In just weeks, a Democratic majority will take over the House of Representatives. Control of committees will shift and subpoenas will fly like arrows at Agincourt. How do you like that? Each hearing will present new terrible choices. Take the fifth, tell uncomfortable truths, or lie and court perjury charges. Each subpoena is a new chance for frightened Trump associates to make new bad decisions like the ones that have felled Cohen and Manafort and Gates and Flynn and Papadopoulos. I wouldn't expect President Trump's agitated tweets to stop anytime soon. And I guess not. Ordinarily, I thought having him overseas for the weekend would keep things relatively quiet. But apparently, it's not to be, not this time around. Okay, let's see. There's a bunch of stuff to continue with this, and we should. Another good stop along the way is Mark Sumner's piece over at Daily Kos from yesterday that I think does eventually get around to, do we hear from Marcy in this one? I'm not really sure. But basically, it comes to the conclusion that everybody has come to. And I see at the top of the recommended list of diaries over at Daily Kos, a similar take from Josh Marshall at TPM, Alyosha Karamazov writing up. Josh Marshall tells it like it is. I'm going to take a look at this one here from Mark Sumner, which sums it up in the headline here. Cohen lied, Manafort lied, Corsi lied, and the bottom is falling out for Donald Trump. That's what we're getting at here. Of course, there's the report of Cohen showing up at federal court on Thursday morning to plead guilty. That's where we start with this stuff. And testify that Donald Trump continued his attempts to make a real estate deal in Russia, even while he was publicly denying that any such deal was in the works. Cohen's deal clears the way for his continued testimony to both federal prosecutors and the special counsel, but his testimony is just one event in a list of jaw-dropping events related to the Trump-Russia investigation. It's a week in which Robert Mueller seems to be busy knocking down lies, clearing the path to the truth about Donald Trump. Last week, Trump finally submitted the long-delayed written responses to questions sent his way by special counsel Robert Mueller. This week, Mueller's team was back in court, not just with Cohen, but to accuse Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort of continuing to lie to investigators, putting him in breach of his plea deal. And Trump associate Jerome Corsi has been engaged in a public legal meltdown unprecedented since Trump associate Sam Nunberg engaged in a public legal meltdown. Wow. That's really true. I guess what I wanted to get to in all of this, and I'm going to see whether this is developed here or not, but I guess maybe we should just go over the material once again just to emphasize how weirdly interconnected it all is. But I did see Marcy yesterday pointing out, as we did in the reading of the previous piece in The Atlantic, that Cohen was saying that he lied the first time he spoke about to Congress about the Trump Tower Moscow deal, in order, he says, to match the president's public statements. Basically, he's basically saying, I lied in order to allow Trump to continue to cover up what was really happening, or what had really happened with regard to the Trump Tower and how long we were negotiating that. And I think the counter from the White House and the Giuliani team, etc., was to say, was to twist that and to say, see, Cohen's a liar, for one thing, and he lies all the time. But yeah, Cohen's statement coincides perfectly with what the president said. And it's a weird and I think short-term play, playing with the words, so that it looks like, they've got nothing here. Everything matches. It's clear that the president didn't lie. If everyone believes Cohen is suddenly telling the truth, that's fine because their stories match. Well, yeah, some of their stories match. The thing is, Cohen has told at least two stories, and Trump's story matches with Cohen's previous lie, not Cohen's current story. Cohen yesterday was in court to say, that story I told you that matched with what the president had said about Trump Tower Moscow, that story was a lie, which is to say, if the stories match, then his is a lie also. But it was very interesting to watch Giuliani say, well, no, the stories matched. So no crime here, no collusion, except it means the exact opposite of what he said. He's just hoping people will become confused, I guess. Anyway, continuing with Mark's write-up, based on the testimony of Cohen, he previously lied to protect Trump from scrutiny on real estate deals with Moscow, deals that continued after Trump was running for president, after he was nominated, even after he was elected. Wow. This contradicts not just testimony Cohen previously made to Congress, but statements that Trump made over and over and over during the campaign, and everyone suspects that he made in writing as well, and that this whole thing was timed to wait for Trump to file his answers and then spring it on everybody. Yeah, we know that if he says what these guys previously said about the deal, that will be a lie, and then you will have the president responding in writing with lies to Mueller, and, well, in ordinary times, the end of his presidency. We'll see what happens. Maybe it will end, maybe it won't. We'll see what happens. It's also notable that Cohen was expected to appear in court 2 weeks ago. The judge was ready, reporters were on the scene, and it didn't happen, Mark tells us. That delay may have been related to the complexities of Cohen's agreements. It could also very well have been intended to give Trump time for handing in those written responses. While Cohen has admitted to his lies, Paul Manafort has dug in. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that the lies that shattered Manafort's plea deal were related to his business dealings with Russia and his activities in the Ukraine. Considering the gravity of Manafort's actions, it's not surprising that he would continue to attempt to cover up everything he's done. But if the lies were only about Manafort's money laundering and illegal foreign actions, they would seem to be unrelated to statements Manafort made about the Trump campaign. Considering the timing, that seems highly unlikely. The clearest point of overlap on testimony by Michael Cohen, Paul Manafort, and Donald Trump is on the Trump Tower meeting. That meeting was arranged by Emin Agalarov, remember him, the same Russian real estate developer who Trump was working with much later than previously reported on the Trump Tower Moscow idea. In fact, according to the latest from Cohen, Trump and Agalarov were working on a Russia project at the same time that Emin's representative contacted Donald Trump Jr., which makes it far, far more likely that Donald Trump would have been in the loop on the meeting even before it occurred. Trump provided a written response, which sources indicate included his repeating what he has said in public, that he didn't know about the meeting before, during, or after. If Manafort also testified that Trump didn't know, that overlap with Cohen would be a very good reason for the sequence of events this week. Michael Cohen's appearance in court wouldn't just be a coincidence of timing, it would be a trap slamming shut. Meanwhile, Trump and Roger Stone associate Jerome Corsi Trump and Roger Stone associate Jerome Corsi continues on a media tour that seems all too familiar. Corsi has tossed the media his entire draft indictment and proposed plea deal. As seen on MSNBC, Corsi continues to insist that the plea deal would have required that he lie. So he's making the brave decision to defy Mueller in a move that protects Trump's longtime friend and associate Roger Stone. In Corsi's convoluted reasoning, despite the fact that he lied to investigators, he can't admit that he lied to investigators because he only lied to investigators. Get it, see? So admitting he lied to investigators would be a lie, I guess. Here an excerpt from MSNBC's exchange here, the reporter saying, "You had led them to believe that you had not had contact with someone on behalf of Roger Stone when you did." Corsi responding, "The first day, the statement I gave was wrong. And it was wrong because I forgot the email that they were referring to." Corsi's position, in other words, is that after Robert Mueller showed him the email in which he solicited information from WikiLeaks for Roger Stone, he admitted that he had written the email. And since he admitted the truth when confronted with the evidence, he can't now admit that he lied, because that would be a lie, which is pretty convenient reasoning for anyone ever caught in a lie. So instead, Corsi has gone on the Sam Nunberg Memorial Media Tour, waving a "Pardon Me" banner at Donald Trump from every television screen. And for anyone who thought that Mueller's investigation was going to quietly wind down, nope. If anything, the investigation is still ramping up. So I guess we'll be talking about that next week as well. Let's see. In case it needed clarification, and it might still, if you really want to have your reasoning rock solid, we'll share this not overly long opinion piece from the New York Times. Michelle Goldberg wrote this one up, and it's trending. It's trending, so it must mean something. Trump is compromised by Russia. Michael Cohen's latest plea is proof. This, I think, helps nail the whole thing down. One of the chief questions in the Trump-Russia scandal has been whether Vladimir Putin has leverage over the President of the United States, and if so, what that leverage looks like. Like, you might think, so he was going to give him a $50 million condo. That's great for Putin, but Trump is out there saying it's all cool, very cool and very legal. Is it? And should we be worried? The significance of the fabled P-tape, he makes it in here, after all, is not that it would reveal Donald Trump to be a pervert bent on defiling the place where Barack Obama slept, though that would be a strong point, I think. Rather, the tape matters because, if real, it would show the president to be vulnerable to Russian blackmail. That's also why evidence of Trump's business involvement with Russia would be significant, as Trump himself acknowledged shortly before his inauguration when he tweeted, "Russia has never tried to use leverage over me. I have nothing to do with Russia. No deals, no loans, no nothing." We still don't know for certain if Russia has used leverage over Trump, but there should no longer be any doubt that Russia has leverage over him. On Thursday morning, Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, the former executive vice president of the Trump Organization, pleaded guilty to making false statements to Congress about efforts to build a Trump-branded property in Moscow that extended into the 2016 presidential campaign. In an August 2017 letter to the House and Senate Intelligence Committees, Cohen said that the Moscow project ended in January 2016. He claimed not to recall contacts with Russian government officials about a potential deal. Cohen told Congress that he spoke about the project with Trump, identified as Individual 1 in the criminal information document that Robert Mueller, the special counsel, that guy, filed on Thursday, only 3 times. He said he never briefed Trump's family. According to Mueller's filing, all of this was false. Efforts to obtain Russian government approval for a Trump-branded development in Moscow went on until approximately June 2016, after Trump had effectively secured the Republican nomination for president. There's the clarification. Cohen, Mueller's document said, discussed the status and progress of the Moscow project with Individual 1 more than 3 times. He also briefed family members of Individual 1 within the company about the project. And I guess here we'll break for just a moment to remind ourselves. I could find you the tweet. We'll look for it. But I think Brian Beutler was the one pointing this out again last night, saying, there's no doubt that Trump will simply say that Cohen is lying about this, but it is well worth remembering that Trump said that Cohen was lying about another of their dealings with with regard to Stormy Daniels. He said he was a liar about that, and then he produced the tape. Here's the tweet. Remember how Trumpers tried to call Cohen a liar about the porn star hush money stuff, but then it turned out Cohen had secretly recorded a conversation that he and Trump had about the hush money? Probably that wasn't the only secret recording. And it does seem unlikely that that was the only one in all of these dealings, right? So keep that in mind, I guess. In January of 2016, back to the New York Times here, according to Mueller's document, Cohen had a 20-minute conversation with the assistant to a Russian official in which he sought Russia's help moving the project forward. The next day, Felix Sater, he's still in all this, remember him? A Trump associate identified in the court filings as Individual 2, wrote Cohen to tell him he'd heard from Putin's office. Cohen made plans to travel to Russia, calling them off only on June 14th, which happened to be the day that the Washington Post first reported that Russian government hackers had penetrated Democratic National Committee computers. At one point, Cohen and Sater were also coordinating with figures in Moscow about a potential Trump visit in connection with the project. So, we now know that Trump lied to the American people about at least one part of his business relationship with Russia, a geopolitical foe that interfered in our election process on his behalf. In a January 11, 2017 news conference, Trump said that the closest I came to Russia was in selling a Palm Beach mansion to a Russian oligarch in 2008. We've talked about that one on the show. While we're just learning precisely how dishonest this was, Putin has known it all along. That means that throughout Trump's campaign and presidency, at least since January 2017, Putin has had the power to plunge him into political crisis. If the Russians are aware that senior American officials, and I think the president qualifies as a senior American official, are publicly stating things that are not true, it's a counterintelligence nightmare. Adam Schiff, the California Democrat in line to take over the House Intelligence Committee, told me, and you can see why. Right? As he points out, this issue contributed to former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn's downfall. Flynn you might remember, appeared to have lied to Vice President Mike Pence about his conversations with the Russian ambassador. This alarmed Sally Yates, then the acting attorney general, another one, because the Russians would have known that Flynn was deceiving Pence and could have used that knowledge against him. Logic would tell you that you don't want the National Security Advisor to be in a position where the Russians have leverage over him, Yates told the Senate last year. The same, said Schiff, is true in spades for the President of the United States. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching KagroX or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring, monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Time to wind things up, I guess. But I guess we'll read the concluding paragraph. That's all we didn't have time for from the New York Times piece, where we just said, remember that basically, look, if the Russians have knowledge that the president is lying outright to everybody about the nature of his dealings, that's a nightmare because it's leverage over the president of the United States. The president doesn't want that word out, and the Russians can presumably get it to the right people so that there's a huge political crisis for the president. But it's interesting. I guess I wonder if anybody's given any consideration to how that would, in normal times, create a political crisis for a president. But maybe, just maybe, Trump is so crazy and has taken us down this road so many times, it's possible that that could be out there and nothing happens. Anyway, this is the concluding paragraph here. Speaking to reporters before flying to Argentina on Thursday, Trump justified his pursuit of a Moscow project this way. Of course, we all heard this one. There was a good chance that I wouldn't have won, in which case I would have gotten back into the business. And why should I lose lots of opportunities? This could be read as a confession of motive. In the 2016 campaign, Russia wanted to humiliate Hillary Clinton and delegitimize America's election. Trump wanted help building his brand. And it's an interesting thing. That's actually the end of the article. Everyone has spent the day since observing that Trump was never, maybe it's true that Trump never expected to win and it caught him by surprise. It certainly seemed to catch him by surprise. Others have observed, and I think it was Will Bunch, I should probably dig up his tweets about it because he's probably turned them into an article by now. Maybe that's what he was tweeting about. But pointing out that part of the reason why it's so easy for Mueller to sink all these people one by one, dead to rights, with their own idiotic comments along the way is they never thought they were going to win. They thought, in other words, that they were never really going to come under any kind of serious scrutiny. They would just lose and go on, and nobody would bother, because no one has ever really bothered to peel back the onion in a way that everybody seemed to latch onto and care about. I mean, lots of people have peeled back the onion and revealed exactly what's going on with Donald Trump even before he ever began running for president. But nobody ever took notice because he was I was going to say a private citizen. He's not very private. He was just an idiot that, love him or hate him, it didn't matter what the hell he really did. But nobody bothered to cover their tracks because nobody ever thought their tracks would be looked at. That is really interesting all by itself. And then, of course, if I hadn't won, I would have gotten back into the business. Why should I lose lots of opportunities? Well, because it's, for the most part, if not illegal to continue operating like that necessarily, it's well understood. Once again, one of the shattered norms here is that you're not supposed to do that, essentially. You're not supposed to. Why should you lose out on opportunities? Because you decided to pursue a different opportunity. And why should you be losing out? I mean, that's the same argument he makes about giving up his businesses now. He eventually agreed to make, okay, I'll just make some blanket boilerplate statements about how I don't run my businesses anymore and my sons do. Here's a stack of blank papers to prove it. That one he couldn't just get away with saying, screw it, I want to run the business. So he made up a fake story and continues to run the business. Why should I lose lots of opportunities? Because that's the way it is. Because when you run for president, it's supposed to be kind of a total commitment. Even if you lose, honestly, you should be focused on that and nothing more. But of course, that was never going to be the case with him. Okay, fine, whatever. Maybe it's not illegal. Maybe it should be. Maybe there's no way to make it illegal. It's just one of those things that we all assumed was going to happen. When you say I'm going to run for president and you make it all the way to the nomination for one of the major parties, you're serious about winning. You're serious about doing this thing, and you're not going to be collecting emoluments along the way. All right. So I don't know what to tell you. It's kind of the end of that part of the story. There's some meta story out there and a couple of other things that we really should be getting to. Some of which we won't, and we'll just have to drop as hints for you. But I want to acknowledge this one here. Peter Spiegel, the news editor of the Financial Times, says this. He has a tweet in which he says, having now read Michael Cohen's plea deal, I doff my hat to BuzzFeed News. Everything revealed by Mueller in his charge sheet was revealed by them in this linked piece 6 months ago. Now, of course, he's linking to his own tweet. But in that tweet, he is talking about the BuzzFeed News story, and it is this tweet. This BuzzFeed story from May appears to be the issue that Michael Cohen is admitting to today, that he worked for Donald Trump on a Trump Tower Moscow into May and June, just before the Republican National Convention. And here's the piece in question. Once again, BuzzFeed News. And it's Anthony Cormier, maybe Cormier, I don't know how he says it, and Jason Leopold. Trump Moscow, the definitive story of how Trump's team worked the Russian deal during the campaign. On the day of the third Republican presidential debate, Trump personally signed the letter of intent. This again from May of 2018, unacknowledged by the New York Times apparently, but good on you, Peter Spiegel of the Financial Times, for explicitly pointing it out. We don't have time to go through the entirety of the article. However, basically, since they appeared to have nailed it, really, we just did go through the article. Just imagine you knew all of what I just told you in May of this year instead, and maybe you did because you might have read this article, and then you would have gotten the point. Okay, I wanted to at least acknowledge the acknowledgement and put that out there. Man, let's see. Other things that need mentioning. All right, I'm just going to have to include this, sort of round up everything. I did find the Empty Wheel article that I had talked about. I have so many things in pocket just from the last day or so that I've scrolled down to what ordinarily would have been much earlier in the week, but it was actually just like yesterday. Empty Wheel's piece explaining everything about the Cohen testimony. And I think in this piece is where she touches on the wordplay of what matches with what, but I'm not sure. I think at the very least it was a tweet pointing that out that led me to this article. Cohen's testimony implicates Trump and his spawn. She touches a little bit on how this is going to bring a couple of his kids into clearer view. And essentially because he let them work on, and I put that in scare quotes, work on the Trump Tower deal, and that's going to mean basically, at very least, Don Jr. gets himself in trouble, but maybe Ivanka in this one too, because apparently she put her fingers in the pie there. So we won't, I don't think, have a time to read through this one. Moving on to a couple other things that need to be mentioned. There's this from The Hill. We just at least have to put this one on record because this could develop into something. I don't know if it's really going to catch on because nobody cares about Paul Ryan anymore. Scott Wong at The Hill. Ryan casts doubt on bizarre California election results. And I guess I first grabbed this one because of the line that went into the tweet, and it is in the lead to the article. Weeks after after House Republicans lost their majority, Speaker Paul Ryan on Thursday cast, and here's the extra word, serious doubts about the bizarre election system in California. He says bizarre anyway, where it appears that 7 Republican-held seats will flip to Democratic control. This is kind of worrying, but more worrying is that they call them serious doubts. They're not serious doubts. They're made-up doubts. Don't say they're serious and throw a picture of a besuited congressman and the current Speaker of the House up there and let people come away with the idea that the charges are serious just because he says they are. They aren't. What's bothering him? The California election system, quote, just defies logic to me, Ryan said during a Washington Post event. We were only down 26 seats the night of the election, and 3 weeks later, we basically lost every California race. This election system they have, I can't begin to understand what ballot harvesting is. That makes it sound very ominous, doesn't it? Ballot harvesting. It was a remarkable comment from the retiring Speaker of the House, who until now had not joined President Trump and other Republicans who have complained about what they believed were election irregularities in places like Florida and California, that is to say, states. After this story was published, Ryan campaign spokesman Jeremy Adler said in a statement, the Speaker did not and does not dispute the results of the election. But he does. That's how you read that comment. And maybe the original headline had serious doubt, and they took serious out of the headline. I'm not really sure, but the tweet definitely went with serious, and maybe they just realized afterwards it's not serious. California does have a more liberal policy when it comes to counting ballots. The Golden State allows absentee ballots to be counted if they are mailed by Election Day and arrive at the registrar by the Friday after the election. That's why results in a handful of close California races were not called until days or even weeks after November 6th. And I have seen people complaining about that, but I don't understand why. What's bizarre about voting on Election Day? I mean, people have said, oh, well, shouldn't it be that they have to arrive at the registrar by Election Day, that it needs to be mailed ahead of time and arrive there? But I don't understand. I mean, if it gets postmarked, that means it's sealed. If it gets postmarked on Election Day, why should absentee voters have to vote early? I mean, a lot of people want to vote early, but why should they have to vote early? If you cast your ballot on Election Day and get the thing postmarked, I don't see what the difference is. That's how long you should have to vote. The same length of time other people have to vote. Anyway, in many cases, the GOP candidates had been leading on election night, but Democrats ultimately prevailed as additional absentee and provisional ballots were tallied in the days after. In Wisconsin, we knew the next day. Scott Walker, my friend, I was sad to see him lose, but we accepted the results on Wednesday, Ryan said. In California, their system is bizarre. I still don't completely understand it. There are a lot of races there we should have won. So his spokesman is full of it. I mean, he just says, I was sad to see him lose in Wisconsin, but we accepted the results on Wednesday. Now, I don't understand California. He doesn't say I don't accept the results, but he says basically that he doesn't accept. Yeah. So, I mean, it's spin, but at least he didn't say I don't accept the results. So at least there's room for the spin. When pressed about his California comments, Ryan said it seemed bizarre and strange that Democrats would win all 7 competitive House races in California. No, it doesn't. Democrats ousted GOP representatives Mimi Walters, Dana Rohrabacher, Jeff Denham, and Steve Knight, and won seats held by retiring Republicans Ed Royce and Darrell Issa. We never did settle. No, you settled that. I didn't listen, basically. I didn't remember. GOP Representative David Valadao, I don't even know who the hell he is, but you remember. He's the one losing to T.J. Cox. But in here they say the race is too close to call. The way the absentee ballot program used to work, the way it works now, it seems pretty loosey-goosey. Ryan said. When you have candidates who win the absentee ballot vote and then lose 3 weeks later because of provisionals, that's not what happened, that's really bizarre. I just think that's a very, very strange outcome. Ryan, who is leaving Congress in early January, because he's not a member, made clear that he doesn't believe there was anything nefarious about the results. Oh yeah, that's clear. He said he would not ask California Attorney General Javier Becerra, a former Democratic House lawmaker, to investigate. Oh, thanks. California Secretary of State Alex Padilla, a Democrat who oversees elections there, aggressively pushed back on Ryan's complaints. It is bizarre that Paul Ryan cannot grasp basic voting rights protections, Padilla said in a statement to The Hill. It shouldn't defy logic that elections officials are meticulous in counting every eligible ballot. California works to ensure every ballot is counted properly and every ballot is accounted for. In the most populous state in the nation, and the state with the largest number of registered voters, this takes time. In California, we believe in an inclusive and accessible democracy. We provide voters as many opportunities as possible to cast their ballots. Padilla's statement continues. That is why we have no excuse vote by mail, I should say. We have no excuse for anything, goddammit. No, that is why we have no excuse vote by mail. Like, you want to vote by mail? You don't have to tell me you're going to be away on Election Day. Just do it. Automatic voter registration, same-day voter registration, early voting. These reforms help drive California's historic registration and a 30-year high in midterm turnout. I stand with the thousands of election officials and volunteers throughout the state who continue to work around the clock to ensure the accuracy and integrity of our elections. The end. Thank you very much. Okay. And I think that pretty much sums it up. But you needed to be aware of the fact that he was out there playing footsie with the conspiracy theorists, and you should be aware of it during the weekend to see whether anything else happens. Let's see. Other things that are happening. One thing I have to note for you on behalf of Judy Vincent, who let me know all the way from Hawaii. Hi, Judy. That I guess we were, you know how we try and take care to do our pronunciations correctly. And I guess, well, we've been running around, Greg and I, saying what? Deutsche Bank? Deutsche? I think I used to say Deutsche Bank. But for one thing, it would be like closer to Bank, I guess, right? Is that right? And so that, and also that we should be emphasizing the first syllable more strongly, Deutsche, and saying cha, Deutsche, and not Douche, not Douche Bank. I don't think we did that one. Or Deutsche Bank, Deutsche. So the way we can say it is because they're such close associates with Donald Trump and other Republican players, distasteful Republican players, we will say, remind ourselves this way, Deutsche Bank, heavy on the doi, and then you'll get it right. That's how you can pronounce it. So Deutsche Bank, as long as we're doing the whole thing in German. So thank you, Judy. Appreciate always getting the correct information on that. Let's see. There's more. Michael Musson has sent us another thing here. As predicted, he says, federal cases have ground to a halt. Trump has a new argument against indictment. Acting AG overseeing the investigation is unconstitutional. Yes. Okay, so I guess that's as predicted here as lots of lawyers everywhere. Anybody who's suing and involving the Justice Department and things are getting tied up over the illegality of the purported acting AG nomination, or I guess appointment. And now every case involving the DOJ is grinding to a halt over this procedural issue. So it's ruining everything everywhere, as predicted, because Donald Trump doesn't know how to run the government. But now that affords him, here's the tongue-in-cheek part of it, affords Trump a new argument. You can't indict me or anyone else in my administration because there's no legitimate head of the Justice Department. Wouldn't that be funny? Okay. Other stories of which you should be aware. Man, there's 1,000. Okay. Let's throw this one in there because it's a great meta story by itself. Matthew Gertz from Media Matters has a great observation on Brett Stevens. And long story short, the observation is Bret Stephens sucks. You agree. I know this to be true. Here's why he sucks right now. Worse than ever. My favorite thing, Matt says, about this take, and we're talking about, remember when Bret Stephens, more or less immediately after the election, said, he ran the piece under the headline, "The midterm results are a warning to Democrats." Right? First of all, we didn't know how big the wave was just yet. Second of all, it was a bad premise to begin with. But he said, the midterm results are a warning to Democrats. Stop manning imaginary barricades and start building real bridges to the other America, Bret Stephens says. Well, my favorite thing, Matthew now says, about this take is that someone keeps updating the piece online to change the number of House seats Stephens says the Democrats won. Isn't that amazing? Per the Wayback Machine, when you can look at the different versions that were online, the original publication date of November 8th, the number that Stephens was crediting Democrats with winning was 27 seats. The midterm results are a warning to Democrats. Don't keep on keeping on with this stupid resistance thing. Start finding a way to come to the center and agreeing with Republicans. By the 9th, it had been updated to just 28 seats over 27. But they did another update. On November 22nd, the article now talks about Democrats winning 37 seats, a full 10 seats more than when he said, warning, you didn't really win anything. But don't you think it needs, well, no, it needs another update to get it to 40. And as Matt notes, you'd think that would change the analysis in the piece. You really might want to just write a new piece entirely, of course. But no, standing by the analysis, the midterm results are a warning to Democrats. Warning. I don't know. You tell me. So there you have it. Now, as it happens, it's part of a longer chain of well, it's not that much longer. There's one more thing. He originally just sums it up in a play in 4 acts and shows the different, I guess, the screen grabs with the numbers along the way. But that really sums it up. That's really amazing that they would just simply go back in there. It's very Wikipedia changey kind of thing, just like, I guess, the Trump administration has been doing in all this. All right, let's see. Now I'm really stuck. Which two things do we go with here? We have only a few minutes. Let me raise both without going into them too far. But here's something you should read over the weekend, I guess. In the Washington Post, David Ignatius had a piece, it was a couple of days ago, the 27th. The Khashoggi killing, remember that one? Had roots, he says, in a cutthroat, no pun intended, Saudi family feud. And I guess really we're talking about Al Saud family feud. And basically, I guess this is supposed to explain why it was that MBS finally reaches the conclusion that Khashoggi needs to die, which would be amazing background information for us to have. No way of us getting through all of it in the few minutes we have left. But another one, this is when I'm really sweating not having this one out there on the record. We should read it. Maybe we can get some of the gist of it, except that I have this other one that I have a feeling we really need to get out there and on the record too, because it could happen. This thing could roll out without our noticing it, and I don't want it to not be on the record. I grabbed a tweet here from, let's see, open up here for me. Rebecca Vallas, Vallas, Vice President. It's interestingly put here, Vice President, poverty. I guess Vice President of, poverty issues, programs at the Center for American Progress. And she's not both in poverty and a vice president there. I would assume she's pretty well paid. Rebecca says, here's an issue not getting enough attention. That's what makes me want to share it with you over the weekend. Michigan's Republican Party, Michigan's GOP, is so desperate to kill a minimum wage hike and paid sick leave that they passed them into law. This is a great procedural maneuver for you. They passed them into law so that they could turn around and repeal them rather than let voters decide by ballot measure, which they lacked the votes to overturn. And I don't know if I have exactly all the procedural details at my fingertips here, but what it sounds like is that it was likely that at some point in the near future, voters in Michigan would qualify a question for the ballot on a minimum wage increase and sick leave, and then it looked like it would likely pass. And I guess it must be the case in Michigan that in order for the legislature to override something passed by a ballot initiative, maybe requires some kind of supermajority, but that may be, I'm not certain what's going on here, but it might be the case that you couldn't get a ballot initiative qualified for the ballot if the legislature had already addressed the issue directly. And so maybe they cut a deal with themselves to temporarily pass and that's what it looks like to me on first blush, to pass a minimum wage increase and sick leave, and then, knowing that they were going to turn around and repeal it so that the harder to defeat later on after the fact ballot initiative couldn't go forward. Do I have that? Is that my guess correct? Michiganders are going to have to tell me what's going on specifically there. But it sounds like such a fascinating process story. I wanted to put it on your radar. I'll share it with you. You can read, and we'll do some I don't know what to tell you, some looking at it, into it over the weekend so that we get the whole thing right. I'm laughing here because this is one of the dangers of bringing up things in the pocket view, where I really don't know where it pulls stuff from that it displays. And when you look at the original, there's nothing laughable about Rebecca Vallis. She tweets under the handle of Rebecca Vallis, and she has put this thing out there, and she's retweeting something. There we go. Retweeting something from LOL GOP. But then this is what explains it. The first person to respond to her tweet is a person who tweets under a rather more humorous sounding handle. That explains it. And then you would know, okay, that's a funny name, but I understand why that's being displayed on my screen now. It's in context. This is a different person tweeting. In the pocket view, I just have, it says, it displays up on top, Rebecca Vallis on Twitter by Rebecca Vallis, comma, then I guess the next person to respond to her tweet. So I've put a chain of tweets in pocket, and it's saying Rebecca Vallis, comma, next person on twitter.com, blah, blah, blah. Then it displays not getting nearly enough attention, the contents of her tweet. But as it happens, the person that responded first to her tweet is a person tweeting under the handle of sorry, Nuclear Farts 99. And I'm 12 years old here. But I mean, come on, Nuclear Farts. That was unexpected. And it's Nuclear Farts 99 at that. The thing is, in Pocket, it drops the 99 for whatever reason. So in the Pocket view, Rebecca Vallis on Twitter by Rebecca Vallis, comma, Nuclear Farts, twitter.com. Like, wait a minute. Does Rebecca Vallis tweet under the handle of Nuclear Farts? I should go check that out. That seems very unprofessional, to be honest. But maybe these are her opinions and not those of her employer. Anyway, that's a nice light note to end with. Nuclear Farts. Well, my goodness. Okay, so that's on the record. We're going to have to check that one out and figure out what's going on. Hey, for all I know, it's due for in-depth consideration on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, which comes up next here on Netroots Radio. Of course, Justice Putnam takes the microphone to take you into the balance of Friday. We've got some time. Nuclear Farts has distracted us from going on with the rest of our material. So let's just read this out, shall we? And then finally give him the time he needs to lay out what's coming up on today's program. Starting off, let's say, in the Bistro Cafe. After Michael Cohen's latest confession, Trump is retreating and tweeting at the G20 because he ain't busy. So good. We'll be diving into more of that. I think he's still blathering down there, like I have been. So we'll figure out what he's been saying. Then, on the rest of the menu, another Ferguson protester has mysteriously died. Better look into that. 4 St. Louis cops are facing multiple federal felonies for beating an undercover cop because they mistook him for a protester at a Black Lives Matter protest, and then conspiring to cover it up. I would think that would be one of those things you can't get away with, but they'll even try to cover up beating up another undercover officer. Amazing. And a 9-year-old's letter to Steph Curry changed how a massive corporation markets to girls. There is more, and I'll tell you about it after this brief announcement, but I'm already salivating. It sounds like a great show. You should stay tuned.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
And thanks for listening. Now, after their break, they'll be moving to what they call the chef's table, where GOP leaders are very upset that their racist politicians are being called racists, and all 2 million federal workers received a memo warning that they can't use the word resist or discuss Trump's impeachment at work.